Колеги, залишатися на місцях. Наші бонусна лекція по історії дерматології. Коротенька, дуже цікава.
So it's a completely different topic, you know, nothing to see with directly with patients. So nothing to see with patients and with diseases and with bad things, let's say, like sometimes in dermatology. Now we will make a short history of the tools which were used for teaching dermatology. Because one day I thought about this and thought even at some time there was no book for this, only oral language and oral experience and so on, and now we are in internet. So there was a very big change and very big move, and this is this topic.
Мы поговорим немножечко про методы, которые использовались в изучении дерматологии за последние столетия. Мы достаточно сделали большой прыжок от учебников диагнозов до ресурсов интернета.
Well, so what is dermatology? You know it very well, of course, but it's interesting to think about this. It's a medical specialty dealing with the skin, hair and nails, of course, and the diseases. And what does medical specialty means?
Что же такое дерматология? Медицинская специальность, которая открывает новое изучение кожи, ногтей, волос, заболеваний этих структур.
And what does it mean, medical specialty? That means that there is sufficient demand from the patients and sufficient body of knowledge to keep full busy a physician.
Что же такое медицинская специальность? Означает запрос от пациентов знаниям и собственно, к врачу, который с этим будет бороться.
And you know, if I specialize in epidermolysis bullosa, maybe I cannot eat every day because there is not a sufficient number of patients.
И, скажем, если говорю врач занимается исключительно буллозным эпидермолизом, то, наверное, на еду каждый день не хватит, потому что не такой большой запрос.
And probably, now it looks strange, but probably during centuries it was the case for dermatology because the patients didn't care about the skin or not so much, and then there was no big demand and there was no need for special doctors and specialized dermatologists.
Если нет большого запроса, то, соответственно, и нет большого необходимости больших специалистов.
And so we can follow. And the first time they spoke about skin disease in the history was in Eber's papyrus. You know, it's quite famous one. It was 1500 before Christus. It was.
Первые упоминания о дерматологических заболеваниях известны папирус Эбера 1550 год.
And this mummy, I found it in internet, of course, because it's very easy to find some things. And this mummy had skin disease. And maybe, I don't know what, of course, and nobody knows, it looks like psoriasis, maybe, but they were skin diseases and probably some demand from these patients.
Фотографию данной мумии нашли в интернете, достаточно просто. Эта мумия имела заболевание кожи, не знаем какой, в данный момент это уже сложно.
And this mummy is very old.
Достаточно старая мумия, и, вероятнее всего, у нее были заболевания кожи.
And Nefertiti, of course, everybody knows about Nefertiti's concern about beauty, about using some horse milk and ass milk, you know, for treatment. And this makes us think that really there was a concern not only for skin disease, but also for skin quality and skin condition at that time.
Всем известно, неперспектив по красоте, уходу за кожей, и также с того времени.
And then after the Egyptians came the Greeks, and the first Greek doctor really was Aesculapius, and Aesculapius in some of his books was speaking about skin conditions.
Из Египта перейдем в Грецию, Асклепий, который говорил о состоянии кожи.
And Epidaurus temple was really the center. It was like Academy of Medicine in Kiev, you know, for Ukraine. It was the center of medicine in ancient Greece.
Здесь тоже находилось как своего рода медицинское учреждение, медицинского института, где организировалось достаточно много знаний.
And of course, you know about Hippocrates too. He was a very famous Greek doctor, and he was also concerned sometimes in his works by skin diseases.
И про Гиппократа, как все слышали, довольно-таки, это был очень известный греческий врач, который тоже писал и говорил о заболеваниях кожи.
So about Latin people, you have Celsus, and one of his books was devoted only to skin diseases.
Цельсий, его одна из первых книг была посвящена исключительно заболеваниям кожи.
And this colleague was describing scabies, psoriasis, and erythema multiforme.
Написано псориаз, чесотка и мультиформная эритема.
And this is very strange because we are speaking, you see, about 2000 years ago.
Говорим про около 1000 лет назад.
And this physician made a classification of skin diseases at that time. It was, there were two types of skin diseases for
Уже тогда этот врач сделал, уже была существовала, создана и классификация заболеваний кожи, было всего два типа.
They were diseases from hairy parts of the body and non-hairy parts.
Было
Hairy parts with...
было связано с волосистой, с волосами и не связанное с волосами.
And you see the strange thing, till 18th century, this classification was valid. And nobody made a more sophisticated classification than this one.
До 18 столетия эта классификация существовала, и никто до того времени не изменял.
And what does it mean? It means in part that dermatology was not a very important science between this time, Latin time, and 18th century, and had not much progress.
Говорит о том, что в те времена дерматология не была важнейшей частью медицины.
And in other places, you know, we are not directly related with them, but in the Arabic School of Medicine, which was developing in parallel with European schools of medicine, we had Rases in Baghdad with a description of smallpox, and Ibn in Arabic is Avicenna. We made him Avicenna. And he made descriptions of anthrax, carbuncle, and head diseases, to hair diseases.
Арабская школа медицины.
Which one?
Да, Авиценна, который также известный был представителем этой школы.
And the next one is about, there is no text, it's because there is nothing. This was Middle Age, you know, everywhere in Europe especially. and the Middle Age was a very dark period in terms of medicine, of sciences and so on, but there was a very prominent thing during Middle Age in Europe. This was leprosy.
И вот то, что интересно в средние века, в случае средние века, это то, что было создано в Европе, это лепрозории.
But you know, leprosy was not a matter of dermatologists at that time. It was more a matter of church from one side and public health, you know, and the question was to separate these people, not to treat them, but only to separate them and keep them aside.
Они существовали как просто центр публичного здоровья, просто отделить таких пациентов от общества, но не лечить.
And next one. This is the starting time of dermatology, or almost, you know, between 1500 and 1750. There was a rapid increase in knowledge with a few doctors which were not dermatologists, but partly involved also in skin diseases. We speak about Paracelsus, about Fernel, about Falloppio in Italy, about Ambasparé in France. And after that, in the 17th century, beginning of 18th, the microscope appeared, and it was possible to make many more things. And for me, Jean Astruc, he's a French guy, and he was the first one using a microscope in dermatology. And for me, he's like the founder of dermatology at some level, because he was able first to differentiate the various levels of the skin.
Между 1500 и 1750 годами стала развиваться уже как дерматология, как наука. Врачи из списка, которые входили Цельс, Лопия, Лепарет, они не были дерматологами, они были обычными врачами, но они принимали участие в развитии дерматологической науки, непосредственно французский Лепарет, который использовал микроскоп.
And so, next. Before it was like a prehistory of dermatology, and now we speak about books and dermatology because the specialty appeared, and this was the first textbook of dermatology.
Мы поговорим о дерматологических книгах. Вот на данном слайде представлена первая книга по дерматологии.
The title was De Morbus Cutaneis, about skin disorders in English.
Название было «Дерматоз кутанеев», что переводится как дерматозы, заболевание кожи.
And the author was Italian. He was Girolamo Mercuriale, and the book was published in Venice in 1572.
Меркуриаль, книга, которая была опубликована в 1572 году по дерматологии.
And very strangely, as I told you, it was still based on the Celsus classification. There were two parts of the book. One part was about hair and head, I mean effluvium, alopecia, lice, tinea, and the second part was describing body diseases, body skin diseases, like pruritus, scabies, leprosy, and lichen.
И первая часть книги посвящалась проблемам волос, а вторая проблемам кожи.
And the next one was the first textbook in English. Now all of them are in English, or almost, but this one was the first one. And the title was the same one as from Mercuriale. It was De Morbis Cutaneis.
Первая англоязычная книга с тем же самым названием, как у Меркуриаля, «Моrbus Cutaneis».
And you see, it was much later. It was in 1714 published in London by Dr. Turner, and it was a very complete textbook already, with a lot of diseases. Of course, the names are not corresponding with current names, but it was very descriptive and more than 500 pages.
Эта книга содержала более чем 500 страниц, она была более полная и содержала больше информации, больше заболеваний.
I wanted to tell you about the books. I took the first pages, but I was able to download the complete books from internet. If you are interested with this, you can find all of them in integral text in internet and free of charge.
В данном случае я использую для слайда первую страницу, но все эти книги в прямом доступе в интернете. Вы можете совершенно бесплатно скачать все эти книги с интернета.
And the next one, when starting 19th century, I would tell you that things got more serious in some way. And Dr. Whelan wrote a book named All Cutaneous Diseases, published in 1808. And then I think his merits were changing the classification. And he made a classification identifying 8 categories of diseases: papulae, squamate, exanthema, bullous diseases, pustulae, vesiculae, tubercula, and maculae, as we do it now, more or less. And he was really the first one to publish the modern classification of dermatology.
В 1808 году Виллином была создана классификация, уже были созданы элементы сыпи, классификация элементов сыпи, примерно такая же, как мы используем на сегодняшний день.
And next step was the first atlas of dermatology, because till now it was only textbook, and in 1817 there was the first atlas of dermatology with engravings.
Это атлас по дерматологии, с иллюстрацией.
And you see, it's a continuation of Dr. Whelan's work, you know, and it was made by his student. The name of the student was Dr. Thomas Bateman, and he made this textbook almost the same as his professor, but he was including a series of engravings in order to explain and to complete.
И книга была издана Томасом Бэтменом, который являлся студентом Виллина. Он продолжил дело своего учителя.
You can imagine how useful it was for the professor to teach the students, you know, with such engravings. Of course, they are not perfect, but it was better than nothing, and it was really a big step in the history of dermatology.
Удобно было некоторым учителям обучать своих студентов благодаря вот этому атласу и картинкам. Картинки не были на тот момент идеальными, но все-таки это лучше, чем ничего.
So this is really not only very important scientific step, you know, but for me it's like compared to art or something like this, you know, it's a piece of art. And this is the first French atlas of dermatology. It was made in Hospital Saint-Louis by Dr. Alibert in 1825, and there are 53 color engravings which really are wonderful and wonderful pieces of art. And there is something very famous. This is, I don't know which is exactly the name, the dermatosistry or something like this. I don't know the exact tree of dermatology. Yeah. So, and this, you see, this tree of dermatology, this is Bateman's classification and Whelan's classification. He took it in French and he made a really wonderful.
Данный сайт показывает создание госпиталя Святого Луи, доктора Оливера, всем известным, да, дерево, дерматологическое дерево, в котором, собственно, использовалась классификация заболеваний, созданная еще до этого.
And you see, some of these engravings, really, it's sometimes closer to the art than to medicine.
И картины, которые были созданы для данного атласа, они больше похожи на искусство, чем на медицинскую какую-то часть изучения медицины.
And really speaking, if you check and compare with Bateman's, you see that the didactic value of the pictures is better. It's
И качество картин уже гораздо лучше, чем использовалось в Либерии.
There was a big progress. And so in German, because I know that dermatology in Ukraine was partly oriented to German dermatology, isn't it? No, at the beginning. Because you know, especially the Polish one.
Что украинская дерматология больше ориентирована на немецкую.
No? Because I saw that the first real, truly Ukrainian dermatologists studied in Vienna.
Yes, in Vienna
with
and in Paris. Vienna and Paris.
And where?
Vienna and Paris.
And Paris too. So I didn't see it. You see that my sources are not very good. I saw that some of them studied with Photographic in Vienna, which was a very, very...
Да, совершенно верно, что многие дерматологи, киевские дерматологи начинали свой путь в Вене, но они также учились в Париже, потому что
And Photographic was a very famous dermatologist at that time, and there were three schools of dermatology, the French one, English one, and not really German, it was Austrian School of Dermatology and Central European School of Dermatology.
Была известна школа дерматологии, австрийская, австрийская, английская и французская.
And Photographic was the first atlas in German, and of course a little bit later than the other ones. And the quality of reproductions was better. And there are more than 100 engravings, and it's very strange because I checked them and I saw this one is very, very particular, you know, but all of them are very realistic. And it's like German people, you know, it's very straight and realistic, and you can see directly the major traits of something.
Еврей был создан первый немецкоязычный атлас, ну как и свойственно немецким людям, все четко, с четкими картинками, четкой информацией.
And the next is about moulage. It's something different, you know. And this is, the word is a French one, and it doesn't exist in any other language. It means like casting or molding, and this is the art of applying mock injuries on the wax models, you know, in order to train students.
Ну и дальше это унижи модель, которые были созданы для того, чтобы обучать внешних студентов.
And the first models were manufactured by Sumo, an Italian one in Naples, by the end of 17th century, and then in Florence, and then in Paris.
Первые были в Неаполе, в Флоренции и уже потом в Париже.
And you see that Barretta is the most famous of them, of this art. I mean, they are artists more than anything else.
From Barretta in our
And he made his job during the second part of 19th century and the first part of 20th. And he made more than 2,000 moulages in dermatology.
Более 1000 муляжей методологии, методологических муляжей были созданы Паретто, они наиболее известны. Ну и Жюль Марко, они используются по всему миру, и у нас на нашей кафедре также хранятся муляжи с времен Паретто, которые заказаны в Париже.
And the good thing, you know, we speak about more than 2,000. It was a very wide diversity of pathologies, and this was a very good didactic tool. Then there you have chiastic acne, and you can see it as if it were on a photo, on a picture. It's not better on internet today, you know. It was really a very high quality of this moulage for teaching dermatology.
Можно видеть, что для изучения дерматологии это достаточно удобно до сих пор. Даже не всегда хуже, чем в интернете, очень четко создано и очень четко показывает стороны анатомии.
And you see some of them, and there are very good collections. I don't know if you have some collections.
We have some from Paretto in our department.
Where?
So
In
our dermatological department.
Congratulations, because
The state after Paretto was published in Paretto.
yes, and because many of them were in France, but many of them in Germany, too, in Poland, and they were destroyed during the Second World War.
Maybe we will try to see them. I will call them.
Of course.
No, I will try.
And the biggest collection is in Paris, in Saint-Louis. They have more than 4,000, but not only Barretta, of course. And a very good collection is in Breslau. What is the name in Polish? Where is Stepan? In Wrocław? Wrocław, yeah. And there is a very nice collection. They have almost 500, and it's...
Очень хорошая коллекция на сегодняшний день, также в Вроцлаве, в Польше.
And so, now photographs in dermatology.
Фотографии для фотографии.
After engravings and so on, and designs and drawings, photographs. And photography was invented at the beginning of 19th century, around 1835, something like this. No, 31, because both inventors, Daguerre and Niepce, were French, but this one Daguerre was really the one who enjoyed it, because Niepce died 1 year after discovery. So,
фотографии летом, нету, которые стали использоваться.
He died in 33, and photography was invented in 31.
Создатель умер за пару лет до внедрения фотографии.
And the first application of photography in dermatology was not making a photo of a skin lesion or something like this, but directly making microphotographies.
И первые фотографии это были не просто фотографии, это были не фотографии поражений кожи, а микрофотографии.
And he was not a dermatologist. The bacteriologist who did it was Alfred Donnet, and he published in 1845 Cours de microscopie, which are lessons of microscopy, and he was gathering 86 microphotographs. This one, for instance, is pus from syphilis.
Альфред Доне был бактериологом, и он опубликовал множество фотографий, которые показывали микроскопическую картину, в том числе и сифилиса.
And in a second step, very fast, of course, very soon after microphotograph, some dermatologists took photography and started applying photography to dermatology. This was around 1864. The first one was English. He was a Balmano scribe, and he published not a book, but a series of photographs. And you see one of them, for instance. And this was the first photographic atlas of dermatology ever published.
В 1864 году стали использоваться фотографии заболеваний кожи. Это был первый атлас, который содержал фотографии заболеваний кожи. Вот одна из фотографий представлена на данном слайде.
And you can imagine it was very popular, and many dermatologists bought this series of photographs, and then he made very soon a textbook of dermatology illustrated with photographs.
И в скором времени эта идея была подхвачена, и дерматологи стали выпускать учебники с фотографией.
And this was in England, in France. Hardy, which was the head of dermatology at Saint Louis, committed to one of his students, Dr. Montméja, the project of adapting this technique of photography to dermatology, because for it was not simple. You know, photography at that time was not simple, and it was quite complicated, and it had to be adapted to medicine. And this physician, he was not a dermatologist. He finished as a professor of ophthalmology, but he was the first one to adapt photography to dermatology.
Альфред Арди, который был главой заведующий дерматологического департамента в госпитале Святого Луи, он первым стал использовать новую технику фотографии в дерматологии. И учебники дерматологии он тоже стали распределять.
And they published in 1868 the first textbook of the dermatology illustrated only with photographs.
В 1868 году вышел учебник по дерматологии, иллюстрированный исключительно фотографией.
And very interesting example, it's only anecdotic, but scientific collaboration of key opinion leaders in dermatology, because sometimes they are fighting between themselves, and there they were not fighting but collaborating, and made the first international publication in the late 19th century. It was Malcolm Morris from London. No, this was the editor, sorry. And the doctors were Paul Gaston Una, you know about Una in dermatology, of course, Chrysostom from Saint Louis, and Dunning, which was a German dermatologist. And they made the first international atlas of rare skin diseases, and this was illustrated with very nice photos.
В данном случае это первая международная публикация. Обычно дерматологические школы спорят между собой. В данном случае это пример сотрудничества, когда они совместно выпустили первый атлас такого рода.
And this is still of interest for us, because in this book there were many first descriptions of diseases, such as porokeratosis of Mibeli, acanthosis nigricans of Politzer and Janowski, and porospermosis of Darrier. All of these were new diseases, new entities, and were published in this first international atlas.
В этом первом атласе рассматривались такие проблемы, как пороkeratosis Мибели, acanthosis nigricans, довольно-таки на тот момент заболевания, которые до этого не рассматривались.
So the next one, everybody remembers about this. It was a headache during the international symposium and so on, you know, because everything was falling down and it was in disorder and so on. But we were obliged to use them for lectures and so on. 20 years ago, for the lecture, I had to use them and not the computer, of course.
Еще 20 лет назад мы же сами использовали крупные слайды, а не компьютер.
And we are a little bit ironic about this, but at that time for us it was of great help, because it was the only way to show one picture to many people, you know. And with a book you cannot do it, with a photo you cannot do it, but with these diapositives you were able to show to 100 students at the same time the same picture.
Данные слайды, сейчас немножко с иронией об этом вспоминать можем, но в тот момент мы могли показать одну картинку большому количеству людей, студентов, коллег.
And journals of dermatology also.
Журналы дерматологические.
And the first one was founded in 1838 in Leipzig, in Germany, of course.
Первый был издан в Германии в 1738 году.
The first French one was published between 1843 and 1852 in Paris.
В Париже франкоязычный 1843-1851 года.
And it stopped because it got bankrupt, I don't know exactly why.
Прекратились они, стали банкротами.
In 1868 it was republished under the name of Annales de dermatologie et de Photographic, and it's still alive.
И в 1868 году он снова вышел в издание под названием «Анализ дерматологии», и он существует на сегодняшний день.
And at the same time was published in Italy our unique Italian journal, which is Giornale Italiano.
И также итальянский журнал «Итальяно», который
1866.
который вышел в 1866 году, примерно в то же самое время.
And in London, at the same time, 67, you see, it was everything at the same time. Journal of Cutaneous Medicine and Diseases of the Skin, and it got bankrupt also, and after it was relayed by the British Journal of Dermatology.
В 1867 году британский журнал дерматологии, который также стал банкротом, и снова потом через некоторое время был переиздан.
And in Prague, in German, was starting the Archive für Dermatologie und Syphilis in 1869, same time also.
Примерно в то же время в Праге.
And also at the same time, the first American Journal of Dermatology, which is the ancestor of Journal of American Academy.
И также примерно в то же время американский журнал дерматологии, который в данный момент сдается под Американской академией дерматологов.
So, and now internet, of course, there is almost no more journals, and when we have journals, we are reading them on internet, and you can see something. I went to Mexico 1 month ago, and went to the university library, and they showed me all these old books of dermatology, because they have them. But nobody was looking at books. And everybody, all the students were like this, and working on computers, and nobody was reading any journal or any book.
Вместе в прошлом месяце и посетили мне университет, и у них есть прекрасные издания книги, но студенты в основном читают, смотрят их через компьютер, через ресурсы интернета.
And so this is what we are usually seeing and checking. And I must tell something, and I will not tell anything about European Academy, but about yourselves. And I must congratulate for open access, because really I think that the modern view of journals in medicine, in any medical specialty, is open access.
И это комплимент нашему журналу, благодаря тому, что по сравнению если сравнить с европейской академией, у нас есть свободный доступ, что очень важно для врачей, иметь свободный бесплатный доступ.
And really, it's the right way, and we have to do it because most dermatologists are not in the States or in France or so. They are in quite poor countries, and they have low incomes, and they cannot afford to pay 40 or 30 dollars or euros for one paper. And then open access permits these colleagues direct access to modern knowledge and to update their knowledge.
Дерматологи из бедных стран, которые имеют достаточно низкую зарплату, они не имеют возможности платить за каждую статью достаточно большую сумму, поэтому именно свободный доступ к статьям, это есть правильный путь к работе.
And so the last one is dermatology, which is a subspecialty of dermatology. And the work was coined in 1995 by Perenya and Brown. They made a paper about this.
Ну и последнее, это теледерматология, которая, публикация о которой впервые вышла в 1995 году.
And teledermatology means something like dermatology through internet. And there is an important role in medical education, in continuous medical education. This is important. Also about universities, my university in Italy is giving most of the lessons and teaching through internet, online, and in English, because in order to be more accessible, of course, to anybody. And specialty training courses via internet are available in dermatology.
Очень важно для обучения через ресурсы интернет, общение через ресурсы интернет и обучающие курсы через интернет.
And of course, we speak about doctors, about specialists, but the public can also access it. I mean, the patient and the patient's family and the patient's relatives, and this is good and bad. It depends.
Но к этому также имеют доступ и пациенты, и родственники пациентов, что, с одной стороны, хорошо, а с другой плохо.
I think if the information is high quality information, it's good. But if this is quite tricky information and the patient is reading it, and the patient is going back to the doctor telling, no, doctor, you are not right because I saw it on internet, I think this is not good, you know? And there should be any filter, anything to avoid this.
Это должен существовать какой-то фильтр, потому что пациенты прочитают информацию в интернете, идентифицируют по-своему, потом приходят к врачу, говорят, что доктор неправы, и что-то свое внести в это. Поэтому должен существовать какой-то фильтр.
And I think that now we have to think about this and which will be the next step. Nobody knows.
Человек нужно думать, какой же будет следующий шаг. Кто пока не знает.
And so you see that we made a long travel in the time.
Может быть, долгий путь.